Very good morning to all. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity today to be on this platform on a topic like this, speaking on a topic like this, and a very good morning to chairpersons as well. All right. So assessing response to downstaging. So what do we define as downstaging? Now we have several loco-regional therapies for hepatocellular carcinoma. Now of these, curative is to completely eliminate where we are not looking at a transplant option, at least in the given scenario. Debulking and palliative is for the advanced ones, where often even systemic therapy is taken help of. Now, when it comes to downstaging, this is to reduce the tumor stage from beyond to within the accepted transplant criteria, where transplant is permissible. So one is outside Milan to within Milan, and now we also have a slightly expanded, a little more relaxed category of University of California's as well. So this is what we're trying to look at when we want to do a downstaging therapy. So either the size of the tumor is larger, but now we're even expanding into the territory where there is even intravascular extension, only barring extrahepatic spread. While bridging therapy is that where already the criteria are within the transplant limit, but either the patient's condition or the availability of the organ is delaying the process of transplant. So we just try to hold the patient. Now, from the perspective of a radiologist, whether it comes to downstaging or bridging therapy or debulking or curative, our job is to assess response to treatment objectively, just to see how it was pre-treatment and post-treatment. So the common therapies used, those which are in practice now are ablative, which is percutaneous, radiofrequency and microwave. Transarterial is TASE and TARE, that is chemo and radioembolization, and external radiation, which is SBRT or EBRT. Now even TARE and SBRT, both these together come in a form of under a category of radiation when it comes to assessing post-treatment response. Now, though primarily we are looking at it, in the future, though there are no guidelines yet, we are also supposed to be evaluating the response to systemic therapy for downstaging with or without combination with these. So I will not be going into the post-treatment evaluation after immunotherapy because that's not exactly downstaging, it's more of palliative. So response assessment, we have multiple criteria which are used. Now RECIST and WHO criteria look at the absolute size, which are generally for the other tumors. That is only looking at the size of shrinkage of the tumor, either in single dimension like in RECIST or 2 dimensions like in WHO criteria. But when it comes to hepatocellular carcinoma, we are not looking at the size, but we are looking at the arterial phase enhancing component. So we've seen the previous speakers show us as to how arterial phase hyperenhancement is a major criteria to determine whether a tumor is a HCC or not, especially in the background of chronic liver disease. So for HCC, it is either the mRECIST or the European, the EASL criteria, where the remnant enhancing tumor tissue is what is measured to assess treatment response. So mRECIST looks at it in single dimension and EASL in 2 dimensions. Now when I'm showing something dark, it means that this was previously bright, that was the enhancing tumor. Like we've seen in the last case of hepatoblastoma, the whole of it would have been an enhancing tumor, but post-treatment, what you're left with is a smaller chunk of an enhancing tumor, which is what determines how well the tumor has responded to the treatment. Now apart from mRECIST and EASL, what is again very popularly followed is the LIRIDS given by ACR. So LIRIDS post-logo regional treatment conventionally is categorized into 3. So pre-treatment HCC, when I'm showing you this image, it means that prior to treatment, the entire tumor was enhancing. It had enhancing viable tumor tissue component. Now after local regional therapy, we are trying to categorize it into either there is residual viable tissue or it is equivocal. We're not sure if there is some enhancing component or there isn't. And non-viable, where we are very sure there is no enhancing viable tissue remaining at all. So post-HCC, LRTR non-viable, you can see a completely white enhancing tumor in the arterial phase is now completely black and not enhancing. You might have a thin rim of peripheral enhancement, which is a normal response to treatment. Or there might be a mass-like enhancement, either within or along the walls of the lesion, which is considered as viable tumor tissue. So we're looking for nodular or mass-like enhancement here, not just rim enhancement. The other being equivocal, where along the wall there is some area of mild thickening, or maybe there is enhancement, maybe there is no enhancement. So we would want to follow this up before we conclude whether this is viable or not viable, or if it has progressed. Now what's important to remember is, when it comes to comparing mRECIST versus LIRIDS. Now in mRECIST you can have a partial response where more than 30% of the tumor tissue is now necrotic. There can be a stable disease where there is more than 30% of the tumor remaining, but it hasn't increased. Or there can be progressive disease where it has actually increased. The enhancing tumor component has actually increased. But when it comes to viable LRTR, all these 3 come under that. So there are some lacunae when it comes to LIRIDS, which is why often when it comes to treatment for curative intent, LIRIDS is often used. But when it comes to downstaging or for palliation, mRECIST is a better criteria to follow because it actually tells you that whether the viable tumor has reduced in size or if it's stable or if it has increased. Now, both of these are interchangeably used depending on the situation. But in India, I've seen most people follow LIRIDS. All right, we look at a few examples. A 54 male, LR5 at diagnosis, that is LIRIDS 5 at diagnosis, a very cirrhotic liver background. You can see a arterial phase hyperenhancing mass lesion involving the left lobe, predominantly the left lateral segment. Now, post-TACE, this has been classified as LRTR viable. Why is that? Now, we're looking at two different sections, one a little higher up, lower down. We can see that lower down, some part of the tumor tissue, this is the arterial and the portal phase, by the way. These two are the arterial and the other is the portal. Yeah, arterial, and these are the portal phases. So we can see there is still a significant portion of enhancing residual tumor tissue, which is continuing to enhance, so it is viable. And here lower down, you can see that there's still part of it which is enhancing along the wall, the small nodule, in both the sections. So only this part of it is actually responded and is necrotic. So this we would call viable. But on mRECIST, we would call this stable disease because there has been no increase. But it is not partial response either because we definitely don't see more than 30% of the tissue having shrunken. Now another example, post-RFA. This would also be LRTR viable. I am not showing you the pre-treatment image. This is only post-treatment. Now we can see that this is a pre-contrast. This is Dixon, which is why the artery appears a little bright. Dixon sequence as a type of T1 sequence. Now, post-contrast arterial phase, we can see multiple mass-like enhancing areas along the wall. Only the central part is necrotic. And in the later phase, in the extracellular phase, there is a rim enhancement. This rim enhancement is normal. That wouldn't be considered as residual. But this part, which was enhancing here, is actually also showing washout. So in this would be TR viable, again on LIRIDS. But on mRECIST, this is partial response because definitely more than 30% of the previously enhancing tumor has shrunken. So the take-home point here would be, we are looking for mass-like enhancement, not just peripheral rim enhancement, because this peripheral rim enhancement is a normal response, especially in the first couple of years post-treatment, and slowly tends to disappear. So on mRECIST, this is how we would measure the single largest dimension to look at how much of the residual tumor tissue is viable before deciding if it's stable disease or partial response or further increase. The 67-year-old male at diagnosis, HCC, arterial phase. I know it's not very brightly enhancing, a little hard to appreciate, but the washout is a lot more apparent. All right. So this is, so often larger lesions before downstaging to make them eligible for transplant require multiple cycles of TACE. So after first 1 or 2 cycles, if they don't respond, they look at switching over to an alternative therapy, but otherwise multiple cycles are given if there is good response in the first run. So this is one such. The same lesion here is now being assessed on MR. Now this is a type 2 hyperintense observation. This is post-contrast. You can see that there is a significant residual enhancing tumor. Now, what I want to highlight here is the role of diffusion. So, like our previous speaker had told us, diffusion is a very, very important part in assessing a tumor, both pre-treatment and post-treatment, because often the enhancement might at times get blurred in a background of hyperperfusion in the liver, especially post-treatment. So in such situations, if you can see, this residual tumor is showing definite restricted diffusion, bright on DWI and dark on ADC. Now there are some papers which also tell us about taking the ADC value to determine whether the response has been adequate or not adequate when it continues to restrict post-treatment, but we still don't have published papers on the values as yet. So the same patient now, after 2 further cycles of tests, we can see that there is absolutely no residual tumor tissue left. There's no enhancing component at all. Maybe a very thin rim of peripheral enhancement, which is acceptable and not taken as residual tumor. Now, one other point to keep in mind before calling something as a residual tumor would be a viable tumor, would be to look for perilesional perfusional changes. Like in this example, which I've taken out of this article, this APHE observation underwent microwave ablation, and we can see that this peripheral rim enhancement is all right, but here there's some nodular enhancement. We're not too sure if it's residual tumor or if it is just perilesional perfusional change because of the treatment. Now, on further follow-up, we can see that this has disappeared. So this stage, we would call it LRTR equivocal, whereas here, now we would call it non-viable. So on follow-up, it has turned into non-viable, but whereas in this example, another case, pre-treatment and post-treatment, this was after, microwave ablation again. So a similar confusion of perilesional enhancement, but this on further follow-up turned out to be actual residual tumor or viable tumor along the tumor margin. So this had actually progressed. So on MRESIS, this would be progressive, whereas on LIRIS, this would be viable. Okay, another example, post-TARE 3 months for this lesion. This is one observation I want you to focus on. Now we do see still some restricted diffusion in this region. This is the contours of the tumor, and also the periphery is showing diffusion bright signal. And post-contrast, there is definite viable tumor. This is the enhancing tumor, which is also showing washout, enhancement in the arterial phase and some washout. But in addition, what we also see is this part of enhancement. So this is a common response post-radiation, something to be kept in mind before we call it as a viable tumor. So some points to note, peripheral rim enhancement is normal. Size of ablated tumor may be larger than the documented tumor size because it's not just the tumor that is getting ablated, but the post-ablation cavity might be larger than the actual tumor size. The other is benign peritumoral APHE, may be seen especially in post-radiation treatment. You may also see it in other ablation, but post-TARE, post-SBRT, it can persist even beyond 6 months. So watch for washout. If there is washout, we know we're not dealing with perfusion change, but with residual tumor. And follow-up, that's the primary dictum. So post-SBRT, APHE may persist for up to 6 months. So we use other modalities and follow-up, such as diffusion or PET, if there was a pre-procedural PET done. Now, LIRIS is not used for systemic therapy, like even if it's an immune checkpoint inhibitor usage or sorafenib or any such, there we only use MRESIS. Now, this is an important point to note because there can be something called a pseudo-progression post-SBRT. Now, one such example is from a BJR article. Pre-treatment, this is the size of the tumor, and post-treatment after SBRT, 3 months follow-up actually shows a large area of hyperperfusion where we'll be left in doubt is the tumor actually progressing. But a further follow-up actually shows that this is just peritumoral hyperperfusion, but the primary tumor per se has undergone necrosis. Now, we've seen downstaging for those tumors which were larger beyond either the UCSF criteria or the Milan's criteria, but there are more and more studies and publications coming on downstaging those with portal vein tumor thrombus. So what do we look for in such cases as radiologists? Persistent APHE in tumor thrombus means that the tumor hasn't responded, that is the tumor thrombus hasn't responded to treatment. Diffusion restriction. So diffusion and persistent APHE are the main factors to look for. And if there is PET-CT, and if it has been PET-avid pre-treatment, post-treatment PET avidity means that there is residual tumor. So this is an example of one such case my friend from AIG shared with me. A large enhancing mass extending through the middle hepatic vein into the IVC. You can actually see the tumor thrombus extending into the IVC. Now this is the pre-treatment PET where you can actually see a large area of uptake. It was a very PET-avid tumor. Now, post-treatment, this is 6 months EBRT, sorry, in this case, and then 9 months. Now, you can see, now this is a classic reaction where the tumor has undergone significant necrosis. It has responded very well, but you see a rim of hyperemia around it, but on PET, you find that most of it is gone. There's very, very good response. This was previously PET-avid, and now that's disappeared, including the tumor thrombus. Look at this. This is a tumor thrombus, which doesn't enhance anymore, and no uptake on PET either. Now, same thing after 9 months, you can also see a mild shrinkage in the size and no residual tumor. So these are, there are yet to be very authenticated publicized articles on PVTT treatment for downstaging, but I'm sure we'll see many more in the future. Now, the other thing, if there is no PET-CT previously done, apart from APHA, because there can be persistent enhancement in the arterial phase post-SBRT even up to 6 months. So in such cases, diffusion is something which comes to our rescue. You can see that this whole tumor has ablated very well to SBRT, but the tumor thrombus still remains. So it's restricting on diffusion, DWI, and ADC. Now, I would like to conclude with the latest guidelines of LIRIS 2004. Now, based on what I've told you, you'd have seen that SBRT behaves slightly differently post-ablation. There can be persistent perfusion, either in the enhancing tumor component or in the surrounding. So there are 2 categories for LRTR, LR, that is LIRIS post-treatment response. A separate one for non-radiation-based treatments such as TACE or microwave or RF ablation. But for both TARE as well as SBRT, there is a separate category. So what does this do? It tells us that LRTR non-progressing is an additional category which has been included. So we previously had only viable, non-viable, and equivocal. But this has an additional category called non-progressing, which is mass-like enhancement to any degree in any phase. It could be arterial vena, venous any phase, which is stable or has reduced in time after treatment. And we also take into account, so previously you would have seen that LIRADS actually takes only APHE into consideration, but not diffusion, but now restricted diffusion, and even T2 signal are being considered. So one such example, yeah, this is from a very recent abdominal radiology article. So before treatment, LRTIV, tumor in the vein, in the middle hepatic vein. 1 month after SBRT, though we're seeing that some of the tissue, most of it has ablated, there is still an enhancing component. So we would have previously called this viable. But now we're going to call it non-progressing because this is SBRT, we're going to wait and watch. Now 5 months later, still non-progressing because there's a very tiny enhancing component, but the tumor has overall shrunken in size. And there is no progress, no new lesion, no increase in size. But 4 years later, it now converts into non-viable. So a long-term follow-up is more important in SBRT. So this is my last slide. So what do we do with SBRT? Unlike the other ablative procedures, we have to follow up for longer. What happens is you can see a rim-like edema in the tissue around the tumor in the normal liver, which shouldn't be interpreted as positive tumor. Wait and watch, or take the help of diffusion and look for washout. And then over time, this perfusion reduces. It is replaced with fibrosis slowly, so it becomes hypointense. So initially, it would have been edema and some tissue necrosis, which slowly undergoes fibrosis. And with time, further reduction in size, and ultimately, you will barely see it. So SBRT requires a separate way of follow-up when compared to other tumors. So in future, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more cases of post-immunotherapy, post-portal vein tumor thrombus treatment for downstaging, but we do not have published articles as yet. So I think we should watch this space more closely. Thank you.
That is an excellent presentation, ma'am. We can take questions from the floor.
Madam, I'm from medical oncology. So we use a lot of immunotherapy of late. So not only liver cancer, other tumors also. We face with one peculiar problem of pseudoprogression and hyperprogression. Of course, many times clinical scenario help us. So in assessing a patient receiving immunotherapy, what are the features that we should take in differentiating these both?
So one of the things for pseudoprogression, just like in SBRT, one thing is we look for whether the enhancing component is also showing washout. A tumor tissue would show washout. It's very important to compare the imaging of the tumor prior to treatment with post-treatment. So one thing we look at is dimension. The other thing is we look at how it behaved, whether there's arterial phase hyperenhancing component along the margins and whether there is washing out. Because the pseudo-progressive part would never show washout, whereas actual tumor progression would show washout. If there is a pre-treatment PET, it helps a lot. If it was a PET-avid tumor, if it's not PET-avid, we can't take its help. The other thing which helps is diffusion. Now, there are more articles coming up on ADC value. So the tumor ADC value, which means that it is a very restrictive tumor, which means the tumor cells are densely packed. So the ADC value would be much higher in a tumor tissue than in the surrounding edema, which can also look bright. So these are the factors, but these can guide us. But very often what actually helps us is a short-term follow-up, like we've seen in the other example. We'll have to do a short-term follow-up unless we're really sure it's progression and it's showing washout.
We use iRECIST criteria in other solid organs. Is it followed in HCC also?
HCC, iRECIST, yes, it is coming up, but honestly, I'm not more familiar with, we use more of mRECIST, but I think immunotherapy is a separate ballgame in every organ. Like we recently saw a case of thyromegaly with a lot of inflammation, changes in the lung with all immune checkpoint inhibitors. I think we need to learn a lot more about it.
Thank you.
Good morning. I really enjoyed the talk. But my question is about LIRADS per se, because right now we are seeing a lot more tumors, HCCs, arise in non-cirrhotic livers, in, for example, metabolic liver disease. So are we in a position to use LIRADS to stage tumors that are arising in non-cirrhotic milieux? Because I know that there is a hepatitis B qualification.
Correct.
Is there something
Correct.
similar?
Only in the background of hepatitis B, even in the absence of cirrhosis, LIRADS can be applied. But I mean, LIRADS is a criteria given by ACR, so they tell us we shouldn't use, we cannot use it.
So not for metabolic liver disease induced
No,
tumors?
not yet, not yet. It probably might come in MASLD in the future, but not yet.
Sure. Thank you.
Extending Dr. Sonal's question, ma'am, there is a gray, especially in resectable liver tumors like non-cirrhotic background, where there is a chronic hepatitis and child-day cirrhosis. There is another component that volume expansion is also required. So how to address this issue, especially in this group of patients?
Volume expansion of?
Volume hypertrophy in chronic hepatitis and child A patients, especially those gray area.
In terms of imaging?
Yes, ma'am. And overall, FLR to improve the functional liver reserve.
We're talking in terms of volumetry, right? We're talking in terms of volumetry.
Yes.
Functional liver residue.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, if it is not going to be an anatomical resection, one thing we look at is the tumor volume taking the contours of it and rest of the liver. So when we're talking about volumetry for the functional liver reserve, when there is a background of CLD, it becomes impossible for us to tell how much of it is going to be functionally efficient. So that is where elastography comes into role, like our previous speaker just showed us. In many cases, we are asked to do elastography to assess the background liver tissue stiffness and also look at the background liver's fat. Now, when there is fatty liver, especially if it's more than 20%, 30% liver fat, and if the background is showing F2, F3 fibrosis on imaging, we know that though anatomically we say there is the residual liver, say after left hepatectomy, the right lobe is going to be so much, or after right hepatectomy, the left lobe is going to be so much. We know that we'll have to take it with a pinch of salt because the functional efficacy of it is going to be less. So I think a procedural elastography and fat quantification might help us know that it's going to be much less than that. But how much less, I don't think we are in a position to quantify it.
Thank you, ma'am. If there are no questions, we can ask.
And I'd also like to just convey that many of the treatment cases that I've shown you are by Dr. Jagdish's team when I was in AIG. A chairperson.
Thank you, Dr. Gayatri. I mean, your talk was primarily about hepatocellular carcinoma, but now there's a lot of evidence for neoadjuvant therapies in intrahepatic cholangios and even perihilar cholangios. So, are the principles any different in terms of assessing the response with neoadjuvant therapy?
There we don't use LIRADS, but it's more of a RECIST criteria because those are not arterial phase hyperenhancing masses. When we often, so we probably the next latest chunk we're looking at is either cholangiomas or metastasis. So we can't apply LIRADS. We'll have to go more in terms of RECIST or mRECIST, depending on whether it's a hyperenhancing tumor or not that. But honestly, I need to read up more about it.